is the most popular word in Canada.
Perfect. Is the most popular word in Canada.
Every person, every waiter, waitress would say it over. You'd say anything to them and go, perfect. Perfect.
My brother-in-law, Rob, is on a crusade to exterminate that from the lexicon.
Oh, well, then he better not go to Canada because, I mean, it became a quick joke that we all caught on to quite fast. Perfect.
He's trying to replace it with beautiful. That's what he's going with.
Well, I don't know if
There's
that's
no
any better.
recording, right?
But anyway,
Yes.
this is Pop Culture Yearbook.
Hey-o.
And on this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I'm Johnny Cash.
And I'm still GIF.
Johnny Cash is not here tonight.
No, he's here
and
with
the
us
person
in
who
spirit.
said that certainly could never pull off Johnny Cash, no matter how hard he tried.
Wow,
Yes.
ouch.
Well, you know, it's true.
That's true. Nobody could. I'm
You'd
Pete,
be
by the
better at
way,
Milli
too.
Vanilli than
He
Johnny
barely
Cash.
looks good in black.
Thank
for crying
you.
out loud.
I was gonna wear a different shirt. I got a different shirt that I was gonna put on for tonight.
Your light purple.
Yeah, I forgot to
with the
change.
black.
I've got
You and me are both wearing pretty black stuff.
Well, mine's
Or
more of
dark
a
blue at least.
Dark blue, yeah.
Mine's like
I've
a
got a
dark
Sun
leather.
Studio shirt. Maybe I can find it.
Well, you go ahead. You go find your shirt while we do your episode, Pete.
So we are going to be focusing tonight on Johnny Cash. Before we start, we realized Gifford here noticed that we haven't put anything out for a while on our Buy Me a Coffee, and we're going to rectify that. So it'll probably be out before you even hear this episode, but we're going to rectify that, and we're having a little what do you want to say, Giff? A little
brainstorming.
Okay, well, I was thinking of what's the word for writer's block? You know, creative, just not having any inspirations.
Yeah, we didn't have the juices flowing, but
we will brainstorm and we will come up with something and we will get it on there.
Yes.
And speaking of that, then you want to see it, all you got to do is support us and become our best friend.
That's right. Go to our link tree and click on the Buy Me a Beer tab and go in, and you can just donate or get into the subscriptions and check out the stuff that we put on there.
Yep,
I'm back, guys.
Yay!
That's there. Pete's back. He put on a shirt just for this, even though none of you can see him. Although, here's the deal. When we do the Buy Me a Coffee, we'll make sure to show Pete's shirt.
Yes.
Because, in case you didn't know, you get video of those very special episodes.
And this will be a special one we put up after this because Pete's actually wearing a shirt, which is rare.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if they pay extra, I'll take it off.
Hey.
So we were talking there at the beginning of this about the way Canadians talk. I was just in Canada for a week to play golf, and it was fantastic. Pete is
Would
about
you say
to
it's perfect?
It was. Well, I wouldn't say it was perfect. It would be perfect if I played golf better, but the trip itself. And then the only other thing that wasn't perfect was we got back, and our golf bags were not returned. Luckily, it was at the end of the trip and not when we got to Canada.
Uh-oh.
But we did the whole thing and reported it and whatever. And one of the guys on the trip came back like a couple hours after us. And he said he saw them there at a different spot. We had checked them all. So they came late. So we got them back the same day. But it was a little frustrating and a little scary there for a second.
No doubt.
So what, a guy, like a worker or like another person? Or
one of the travel companions?
We had a friend of Chris's who came, who flew on a different flight, and so he came out later than we did.
Oh, got it.
And he saw them sitting there before we ever. I haven't heard a word from the airline yet. I don't even know if they know we got them or what, but
they don't care.
But
yeah, they don't care.
Anyway, this is recording in July. This is that month where you go on vacation, and Pete's about to go on a vacation again, like he always does too.
Mm-hmm.
We're working really hard to get all these episodes recorded.
All for your listening pleasure.
Yeah, we don't miss a week. We don't miss. We stick to the schedule.
This way we have things to listen to on our road trips for our vacations.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Well said.
So let's get into it, Pete. Tonight we're doing 2005. We've talked about the year in general. We talked about How I Met Your Mother. It was my choice, and now tonight it's your pick, Pete. What are we going to talk about?
So I'll say a while back we did the movie 42, which was the movie about Jackie Robinson. And a big reason why we picked that movie out is because of my dad. He was a big Jackie Robinson fan. This kind of falls in the same category where a lot of what me and my dad bonded over was the music that he used to listen to. And at the top of that list was Johnny Cash. This movie I thought was similar to 42 in a lot of ways. In fact, I got a couple of notes, a question for Brad actually when we get into it.
What movie are you talking about? You didn't name it.
Well, I'm building up to it. Just be patient.
Oh, okay.
All right. I'm talking about the movie Walk the Line.
There it is.
Johnny Cash biopic. That came out in 2005, and as I recall, I believe it's probably the last movie that we went to, I think, as a family, because I think it came out around Christmas time, if I recall.
It was November 18th of 2005. Yes. I remember being later too, because
maybe it was Thanksgiving. So
I don't know if we didn't go right away. I thought we went to this movie right before Isaac was born, and I mean, because Kim was very pregnant, and there were two movies that I remember seeing. We were just trying to get through this time, and one was this, and one was King Kong.
Oh,
so I don't think we saw it till Christmas, but I'm surprised we would have waited that long. So I remember it like you do.
Right. And I think that my family was all in town over, it was either Thanksgiving or for Christmas, but it would have still been in the theaters. And so we all decided to go see this, and that we should all see it together with my dad because he was such a fan. In fact, he, being a musician that my dad was, he was able to sing some of the Johnny Cash songs, not a lot, but he did sing I've Been Everywhere, and which is the one where he's just rattling off.
Well, that's impressive, because I listened to that today several times, and I don't know how you can even do that.
Oh, my dad could do it on a dime. Like if you had asked him to do it, he would rattle through the entire song, and he knew every word. And so that's just kind of one fun little thing with my dad that he did. But we didn't go to it, especially in my adulthood. We didn't go to a lot of movies with my parents. And I think my brother was in town. We went down to the Eden Prairie Theater, as I recall it, and we loved it. I thought that this movie was about as perfectly done as it possibly could have been for a movie like this. Just because everything that I've read about it is that it's pretty factually accurate. It pretty closely does. They have to take some artistic licensing, to condense the story and whatever. But pretty much everything did happen as it was depicted in the movie in many ways. And so, plus, I thought that I just think it's really hard to find the right actor to play Johnny Cash because he's such a distinguished personality in and of himself. So how do you get somebody? I wasn't sure about Joaquin Phoenix at first, seeing in some of his other stuff that he was going to be able to pull it off, but he made it his own. You're never going to be able to
doing the singing too, which is the big.
He did the singing,
scary thing of, will that sound any good at all?
Right, and you can't replicate Johnny Cash's voice. You're never going to be able to do that. But he did sort of, like I just said, he made it his own, and the songs as he did them were good. And it was really well done. And it was him and Reese Witherspoon played June. And in fact, my wife said that she actually likes the music from this movie better than the original Johnny Cash songs.
Really?
Johnny and June. I can see, I can agree with her on some of the June Carter's music. And I think actually the singing here was probably better in some respects for some of the songs, but I don't know. You're never going to top Johnny Cash with me. And so, but I thought he did very admirable job, and I thought that in some of the scenes, the way that they did the I guess photography or cinematography or whatever you call it, with the lighting and everything, there are some shots where it looked just like Johnny Cash, where I didn't pick up on it really before, but there are some that were on stage where the lighting was, he was kind of a silhouette.
Mhm.
And the way that he had his hair and everything. And the reason, by the way, that I had to go change and put this shirt on is because last year we actually we drove through Memphis because we went to Gulf Shores, Alabama. And we drove through. We stayed a couple of nights in Memphis and got to see that city. And one of the places that I wanted to see was Sun Studio, which is depicted in this movie. And it looks, just like in the movie, and it would blend in with any business on Main Street in Tyler. You wouldn't even notice that it's there, right? Tyler, Minnesota, for the newer fans, that's our hometown, just a small town. But you go into it and they give you the tour and just the history that is in that tiny little building. You have Johnny Cash, that's where he got his start. You have Elvis, that's where he got his start. Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins was another one that was very famous, and just a whole long list. Tom Petty had performed in there and recorded music in there, I think they said, and they rattled off all of the names, and it's just ridiculous how many big names came out of that studio and got their start out of there. And just think, if that studio never existed, how different that our music landscape might be today. Because they were kind of the pioneers. And so we'll get into it when we get into the movie, but the Sun Studio was owned by this Sam Perkins, I think was his name, or Sam Phillips. I'm sorry, Sam Phillips.
Sam Perkins played for the Lakers.
Sorry. Yep.
Out of UNC.
Yep. And but overall, I thought this is just a fantastic, fun movie. I love the music. I love that. The storyline is just great. Some of it you think that they're stretching the truth, but then you look it up and it's really not. It is how it happened.
There were some things that were not totally accurate.
Well, we'll get into that. I guess you and I will fight about that. But
I don't think there's any need to fight.
But of course, any movie like this is going to have some of that. But overall, it was it just really well done, and I love the story. I love the movie. Gifford, what say you?
Well, I was a big fan of the music, of course. I thought that Joaquin Phoenix did an amazing job as Johnny Cash. It absolutely blows me away that both him and Reese did all the singing. There was no dubs or anything like that. And then, of course, the other actors, or a lot of the other actors that they had portraying Elvis or Jerry Lee or Waylon Jennings, who was portrayed by his own son Shooter, are actual musicians. But Reese and Joaquin were not. And of course, they had extensive voice training and actually learned to play their instruments for this. So as far as the making of the movie, you just got to tip your hat because of the dedication that they showed to pull these roles off.
Yes.
I would tend to agree with you. Listening back to some of the songs for June Carter, I did enjoy Reese's singing more than June's. But, and of course, nobody tops Johnny, but Joaquin Phoenix was just phenomenal. It was just so much fun to watch him embody that role. The way he played his guitar and the way he'd, kind of snarl his lip a little bit and, change his voice register so much lower to sound like Johnny when he was singing. It was just great. So yeah, big fan of the show as well.
Brad?
Yeah. So, I didn't go see it with my family like Pete, but this is one of those movies that my whole family was excited to see because we were all Johnny Cash fans, and I was a Johnny Cash fan growing up, and my dad loved Johnny Cash. All the grandkids have grown up knowing and loving Johnny Cash because of Grandpa. So, but then you wonder how they're going to pull this off, and some of these movies don't really work out that well. But it had this great cast. You guys know I love Reese Witherspoon.
Yes, sir.
And the reviews came in right away, and they were great. And it's like, well, this is going to be a big deal. This is going to be awesome. And so I was excited to see it too. And like I said, we saw it. I remember seeing it when we did because Kim was very pregnant. The one thing that I would add to this that Pete didn't bring up, kind of surprisingly, is so I was like 6 or 7 years old, and my parents took me to an Oak Ridge Boys concert because I loved the song Elvira so much.
Yes.
And apparently the story is I fell asleep before they ever played it, so I didn't even get to hear it. So I guess technically that was my first concert. But my first real concert that I like chose to go to was with Pete and our friend Haken, and we drove. We were still in high school. We had just finished. I think we had just graduated, actually. I think it was right after our senior year, but we were still home. And we drove to Minneapolis and went to the Orpheum Theater and actually saw Johnny Cash in 1994. And part of the reason we went, we all loved him, but the opening band for that was the Jayhawks, who we talked about on our Minnesota music episode. And I mean, I just feel really, I remember everything. I mean, that's part of the whole point of this whole podcast is I remember everything. I have almost no memories of that concert, and I wish I did because I can't. All I can remember of that concert is that most of us got upset that June Carter spent too much time on stage and took away from Johnny. And that's what we talked about afterwards. But I can't even hardly remember him singing and what it was like. And I wish I could, because what an amazing first concert. I mean, this is a guy, I don't think we realized at the time what a big deal it was to get to see Johnny Cash live.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really old at this time already. And it's just, you would have never expected that to be our first concert. And then with another great band that we loved at the same time. So
is that the same weekend
really
we lost you at the Mall of
really
America?
Big deal, and I just wish I had some more memories of it, like of specifically how he sounded or what he looked like on stage, because I can't really picture it. I can picture where we sat. I know the theater, but I can't really picture a whole lot of him, unfortunately.
Well, that's a great story.
Yeah, I was just saying. I think that was the weekend, Brad. We lost you at the Mall of America. Is it?
Oh yeah, you've already told that story.
I don't know if I have on this.
Yes, you have.
Oh yeah, yeah, you have.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
You tell a lot of stories more than once on here.
One of the other things I would like to point out is all the awards that were won coming out of this movie. So Witherspoon won Oscar and Golden Globe for Best Actress. Joaquin won the Golden Globe, was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor. The movie itself won the Golden Globe for Best Musical. Was nominated for 3 other Oscars. So definitely a highly, not only box office wise, did well because it had a budget of $28 million and made 187, but also critically acclaimed. So, it's a damn good movie when those two things come together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Reese Witherspoon. I mean, I think we all love Reese Witherspoon, right? Is anybody disagreeing with me here?
Well, we know that I do. So
the thing is, there's a million hot girls in Hollywood, right? But Reese Witherspoon, I'm telling you, she stands out because she's so talented. She's so friendly. She's got this pretty face that, she's easy to fall in love with, which makes her the perfect candidate for this role.
She's got that girl next door vibe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well said.
Absolutely. The way that it was well deserving, those awards that you mentioned.
But she is an amazing singer. She's so good in this movie singing. It's like, really impressive.
Well, and that was kind of the fun. Kind of the interesting thing with June. She came up as, a child, radio personality and performer with her family. And she always said that she was probably the weakest singer in her family, but she, like she said in the movie, figured out a way to be funny. And that's the way she kept herself in the act. So, as you watch this and you listen to Reese sing, you're like, geez, she's the worst singer of her family. Like I absolutely loved her singing in this movie. It's just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Right, so the example, so I'm going to jump forward just to a minute, but then we'll go back to the beginning. But like what you're talking about as an example is the first scene where Johnny Cash comes on stage, where she gets something stuck in the guitar strap and she has to improvise, right? And so that's
Mhm.
how it was that kind of thing that June Carter actually would do to kind of become a fan favorite. And in addition to her singing, she also had the personality.
Mhm.
And so that's why she was kind of the more well-known one.
Yep.
So in the movie itself, of course, it opens up. It has that kind of haunting feel to it because you're at a prison. It takes you. The opening shot is at Folsom Prison, and anybody that's even heard of Johnny Cash, that's the first song that you think of as Folsom Prison
Yep.
Blues, and so that's why that's the perfect opening. And so they start out to the scene that they come back to later on, but they are performing for all of these inmates at Folsom Prison, which is a concert that they actually did in real
Mhm.
life. But Brad, by the way, Brad, I'm going to have you do a shot anytime you make a reference to Walk the Line.
Well, you mean Walk Hard?
To
Or
walk hard, yeah.
I was
Walk
going to
hard, I
say
meant.
they're not performing. The band's on stage, but he's not out there because he's backstage thinking.
Yep.
And the
But they're
first thought I
waiting
had
for
is
him.
Dewey Cox needs to think about his entire life
Yes.
before he steps on stage.
Yeah.
So there's one.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, this whole
So
beginning with the brother. I mean, Walk Hard just nailed it all. God,
And what year was Walk Hard again?
2007. We're
All
gonna be
right, so a couple more years. Yeah, we'll get into it.
So yeah, the band is playing, and all the prisoners are going nuts, which is making
Mhm.
the warden a bit nervous. You can tell, but then they're waiting for him. And the music that they've got going, that they're just kind of repeating the same thing because they're waiting for him, and they're looking back. And I believe that the guitarist, Johnny Cash's guitarist, that is portrayed in the movie, I think that is Luther Perkins. Um,
Yeah, I
so
think that's right.
that's his main. That's kind of his main guy, and so he's kind of looking backstage, and you can tell that the band is getting a little impatient as well. Whereas Johnny Cash, and he's just standing back there, backstage. What is the makeshift backstage, which is also kind of a wood shop, where they've got a table saw, and so he's looking at it and contemplating, and then we go back to his boyhood or childhood home, which is just sort of a little shanty in the middle of nowhere, Dice, Arkansas. um, and so we are taken back to his memories with his brother, all these different things. They listen to music. They're listening to the Carter Family on the radio
Mhm.
in one shot, and they also do some exchanges between him and his brother, and how they're just kind of playing as they're running around in the long driveway or whatever it was, the road. And he talks a little bit about Christianity. The older brother does.
Yep.
And so that in real life, that had a big impact. The older brother was really into Christianity first, and that influenced JR. And we say JR because officially, legally, that is Johnny Cash's name. And that's his birth name that was actually on his birth certificate, is JR Cash. And so it's because the parents had an argument about what his name should be, and they couldn't decide, so they just named him JR. And so I think it was John and Ray was that they were arguing about, so they just named him JR.
Okay.
Whatever the R. I should have written it down, but in any event, that had if you listen to Johnny Cash's music, he's almost like bipolar in the sense that he's got some really, really gospel Christian stuff, and then
Mhm.
he's got some really hardcore. He's got a dark side to some of his music too, as is exemplified later in the movie with Cocaine Blues, which we'll get into.
Right.
But going back to where we were, we find out that he's got like an abusive father.
Yep.
And you're just terrified of him. I was terrified of him watching the movie. And who is that actor? What other stuff has he been in?
He was the T-1000 in Terminator 2.
Oh, that's right.
Well,
Thank you.
he also played Elvis's father in the Elvis movie in 2005. So he played
okay.
a famous musician's father in two movies the same year.
This is one of the things that that I read was not totally real. The dad obviously was not very supportive and kind of blamed him for stuff, but that they didn't have this like lifelong estrangement where he was, I mean, because he's terrible through the entire movie, right up until the very
Right
end.
until the very, very
And
end. Right.
from what I was reading, that they made him the villain because he needed a villain.
Yep.
But it was not that bad, and they actually got along better than that.
Well,
In time, eventually.
And the show depicts that. I mean, obviously his older brother is the one he's closest to, and they have a wonderful relationship. And even after the accident,
Wrong kid died.
Yeah, that was I wrote that down. The devil did this. One. He took the wrong son.
Yeah, he even said
yes.
that.
Yes.
Is just. I mean, how do you recover from that? You never recover from your father saying that to you.
Right.
Right. I loved before he died. I loved how they were talking about Bugs Bunny though too, and they even referenced Foghorn Leghorn. Yes. That was pretty great.
Which isn't factually correct either, because Looney Tunes didn't come out until like 2 years after that scene would have
really
taken place. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, and they didn't even have a TV, so it would have had to have been a radio show.
Radio, probably, yeah.
Yep. Huh. I didn't think about that.
I thought about that when he goes, "What's up?"
Those were played though in movie theaters. Looney Tunes were initially like they'd been around in movie theaters, I think, before they would have had TVs.
Oh, that could be.
So I don't know if that makes it they would had like seen it that way, but I know
used to
they
call
were
them
around
Nickelodeons, like the Nickelodeons maybe that they used to have.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that could be.
Okay. Wow, we got off on an educational tangent there. So then, so the older brother is sawing some wood and sends JR off to just go fishing because he doesn't need his help. And so he's fishing, and then you can tell something terrible happens because he's walking home, and the dad comes driving by. Dad and somebody else were driving by in a pickup truck, and he says, "Where were you? Where have you been?" Mm-hmm. And they're like, "Well, what's going on here?" And then it turns out that there was an accident with the table saw, and eventually the older brother dies as a result of it. Now, in real life, in the movie, he dies within a few hours of the accident. In real life, it was a week. So that was just kind of one of the things that I don't have a problem with that kind of, they had to condense it and it's fine.
Right.
But
and speaking of condensing it, then they jump forward to Joaquin or Johnny JR leaving for the service. So basically it jumps forward a good six years, probably
more.
Yeah, I'd say more than that. I would guess he was maybe 8 years old in when he died, when the brother died. I'm just guessing.
We only see the Air Force for a couple of minutes too, and then all of a sudden he's married with a kid. So I wrote, this is moving fast.
You know what I wrote down? The question, Brad, that I wanted to ask you, and the comparison that I made was there's a lot of similarities between this movie and 42, where this has
that's
a lot
where
of little vignettes to start, and you were like, "Oh, this is terrible. I hate this." Did you think the same about
first of all, I didn't say it that badly. And no, and here I did not like it. I just know, I mean, we're just really moving fast, which is good. Let's keep it going. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's talk about the good parts here, and forget all the little details about this other stuff.
Well,
brother died. Let's move on.
A couple big things. He he buys his first guitar and starts writing, Folsom Prison Blues.
I love that
that's
part.
Pretty
where
significant.
See him like working out the words to the song.
Yeah.
That's really the only important part about his time in the Air Force that we see.
Yes.
Well, supposedly, I don't know if this is true or not, but in the movie, it's inspired by the fact that they watched like a documentary movie in the Air Force. They're watching a movie about Folsom Prison and how badly these prisoners were treated. And that had an impact on them. And that sort of inspired the song.
Yep.
So then we go back, and now he's married and to just a peach of a wife.
This is another one where I read she may not have been nearly as bad as she. I mean, they made her out to be pretty ugly in this movie.
See, and I disagree. I honestly didn't think she was. She looked that bad because again, going back to
She
the
didn't
service,
care one bit
he's-
about his career, which is that's all. I mean,
uh,
that's his career. That's what he's doing to support the family. I mean, if you don't like it, I mean, it's
I
At first it
disagree.
made
I
sense.
disagree a little bit because so when she's on the phone with him when he's in the Air Force, she basically gives him an out, right? Like, my dad says you're no good. There's something wrong with you. We probably shouldn't get married. He talks her into staying with him, and then he's got a baby, he's got a house and a family, and he's got to put food on the table and pay the bills, and he's not getting it done. And so
early on, but sorry if I got you off there.
no, go ahead.
I thought you were done rambling. No, I'm kidding. But early on, it made sense when when in the scene where he and his friends are all sitting on the deck and they're just kind of writing music and sort of finding themselves musically. And then she's all pissed off, which she shouldn't have done when they were there and everything. She should have waited until after they left. But it's like the big deal was that they were struggling to pay the bills and struggling to pay rent and everything. So I saw her point then. But then a little bit later, then he gets a record deal and things are starting to happen. He's making money. He's able to pay the bills. So what's the problem? That's where I kept.
And that's where what I read is that she wasn't probably that bad. And even the stuff where they showed how June kept like denying him that and this was from her perspective, but that wasn't maybe really the truth. And actually there was a quote where June actually said once something like, he's going to be mine to her. So, that whole thing could have been different in real life.
Right. Oh, well, absolutely. It could have been. Yeah. They took some artistic.
But I mean, they got divorced. They were going to get divorced. So you might as well make it look bad. So the divorce seems real.
They were making him look more like the good guy by making the wife.
I don't think they made him look like a good
guy. I don't
no.
think they made him look like the good guy.
They made the love story better. The love story more justifiable. Maybe
that's a good way to put it.
The way that I'm trying to find. But so
Sun Studios.
So now we're at Sun Studios. So he's basically desperate. And what I liked was a little subtle reference. I mean, obviously it didn't happen just like this, but the subtle reference as he's walking up to Sun Studios, there's a shoe shine boy, he's shining shoes, which is obviously in one of his biggest songs, the story about the shoe shine boy. But in Get Rhythm When You Get the Blues, right?
Yep.
But it is those kinds of little things that were just sort of fun. So he's desperate. It's his last chance. He's got to go to Memphis or to the Sun Studios in Memphis. And basically he's got no other chance. They want to reschedule. He was like, call my secretary, which, by the way, when we toured Sun Studio, that secretary, that guy and the secretary were real. And it was the secretary who turned on Sam Phillips to Elvis Presley. Sam didn't want anything to do with Elvis. He thought he was terrible, but the secretary was the one that said, you got to give this guy another chance. And so that's where the reference was. And Elvis also had to pay $4, just like Johnny Cash did in this movie. And that was they make a point of that in this tour. So anyway, he's getting into. He finally says, "All right, come in. We'll give you a chance." And so they go in, they start playing for him, and it's just this like Christian music that you can tell his heart isn't in it, and all that kind of stuff. And I thought Sam, being the genius, the musical genius that he was, knew how to get the most out of him.
It was very convenient, that inspiring speech he gave right there on the spot to,
to
bring it out.
Again, I'm not sure if that's exactly how it happened.
Sure that probably was embellished, but that's great.
Yeah. But I it was probably over a period of several hours or a couple of weeks or something. But he's like, no, this is how you need to be thinking of the music. He did inspire him. But basically how he turned it around was, if you're hit by a train or something in the middle of a ditch, laying there dying, what would really be going through your head? And so you wouldn't be singing about Jesus and all that kind of stuff and how happy things are. And so then he starts singing Folsom Prison Blues, which he wrote in the Air Force. And he starts out really slow, not confident in himself.
I love how he sings
Yeah.
this, and he's kind of nervous, and he just builds, and his confidence grows. And of course, the
Yes.
band picks it up
The
eventually, even though
guitar
they have
riff
no
is
clue what's going on. I mean, it's a legendary. If that's the way it really happened, that's just amazing. And but the way they portray it, and Joaquin Phoenix's little singing there is just that is awesome.
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And this
So
was not
then
the song he sang at this moment, from what I read too. This was it was a different song that wasn't one of his bigger hits. Um, but of course, it worked better
okay,
in the movie to use this one.
sure.
Hmm.
So then he does get the record deal. He does go home, and his wife is happy for him. Not right when he walks in the door because he's a little drunk. But then when he explains why, then she's happy because they finally have a way out. They're able to pay the rent and pay the bills and all that kind of stuff. So, um,
And just like that, he's on tour with Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis and Roy Orbison and
and
June Carter.
June Carter.
Yeah, could
Yes,
you
that's
imagine
what I was
going to one of
thinking.
those shows? I read that the first tour he was on, it was just him and Presley, but oh my God, could you imagine? I mean, you wouldn't know what you were seeing. Obviously they weren't who they were yet, or who they were going to become. But holy crap, if you could say, yeah, I went to this concert and it was Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley. I mean, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And I like the guy they got to play Jerry Lee Lewis. Who would you say that was earlier? Did you say that?
I
That
don't.
that was Waylon Payne. He actually auditioned to be Waylon Jennings, but the
Okay.
producers liked him better as Jerry Lee Lewis because of the way he, carried himself. And I guess
Yeah.
one of the things I read was that a gentleman who knew the killer um, said that if you want to see what Jerry Lee Lewis was like, you watch this movie. That actor was the one who portrayed him, in that guy's opinion anyway. Somebody who knew Jerry Lee Lewis said
One
that's the
thing that
way
I
he was.
read is that Jerry Lee Lewis he was always talking about how they were all going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one thing they brought up in the movie. And I just thought it was interesting. I mean, you have we think of these are legends, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are the biggest musical artists of all time, and then they're just having to drive themselves to their own concerts, which is how it
Yeah, I
went
love
in
that
those
caravan
days.
where they're all in the cars and go to the hotel together, and
Right.
Right.
They don't
awesome.
even have a bus. They all have to drive like in 3 separate cars and caravan down to wherever they're going. It's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
That's what they had for their record deal. Well,
I
get
also
me
like
out
when
if you
he's
can.
talking on the phone with his wife, and then with June at the diner when he meets her, like kind of for the first time.
Yeah.
The references to their kids, like Roseanne Cash, and
Mm-hmm.
Carlene Carter, who are people that we, well, Roseanne Cash had some great songs. Carlene Carter had one when we were in high school. I remember that video from CMT.
Yes, they
But
played
just
that
hearing those
all
names
the
of people
time.
that were real people who grew up to be musicians too.
Mm-hmm.
Every Little Thing, that's the name of the song,
That's it.
the
Yep.
Carlene Carter. Yes. So you can see that the story is starting to develop. He's falling in love with. Well, there's going to be some chemistry between June and Johnny, which you knew anyway going in, obviously. But he's starting to shirk his family responsibilities. The wife is getting all pissed off because he's off, doing these concerts and having fun and everything.
Well, he's
And
also taking drugs and sleeping with groupies, too. So,
yeah, not quite yet, but he was a little later.
That
Right. I
first
think
time
that
he
came.
went home, he was more just really withdrawn at home. He
right.
wasn't in
But
drugs
Yes, he
yet.
was like it was like at the family Christmas. He's just kind of staring at the dinner table. He's just staring off into the middle of nowhere. And he's it's not where his heart is. Obviously,
Isn't it kind of ironic too that Jerry Lee Lewis is talking about going to hell, but isn't he the one that married like his 13-year-old cousin or something?
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That's why my next note that I was going to mention actually.
I mean, he'd be like
uh,
probably the strangest of the whole group as far as real life.
mm-hmm.
it's probably how he justifies his actions. Well, we're all going to go to hell anyway, so it's like why not? Why not marry my 13-year-old cousin? So.
Right.
YOLO.
So it was it was the first tour where he yeah, YOLO. um but that's when he first tries to kiss June in the hotel, right? Because they have
Yep.
this moment where she gets all the books out, and he's impressed by how many books that she has, and they have this little talk. He tries to kiss her like 3 times, and
Yeah, it's pretty
basically
awkward.
she shrugs him off. It is awkward, but you got to admire his persistence. He doesn't give up.
But this is
But I
big
think
because he gets turned down by her. That leads to the drinking and the drugging, and then he starts having sex with that big boob girl, and everybody sees, even a 3-way. So she
Yeah, so
kind of,
it's all June Carter's fault that he got
Yeah, I
into
guess so.
drinks, and drinking and drugs and other women.
if she would have
Uh,
just taken him that first night, he would have been just fine.
Yep. Yeah, he had to get the
Yep.
poison out.
so now we go. They're on another tour. I can't keep track of all the tours that they're on, but now I'm probably skipping over a few things, but he's on stage performing, and he coaxes her out onto the stage. She doesn't want to go onto the stage, but they have their first duet. It's wasn't really rehearsed, but it's Time's a Wasting. It's a song they both knew really well, and it was kind of the first time you saw that on stage chemistry between
But that
the
was
two.
a song that she sung with her ex-husband, and she was telling him she should not be singing this right now. And he kind of forced her into all this, and
Oh, and this was
and this is
right
where he did
after
kiss her on stage, and she runs off, and then he runs off, and
and it was right after I did skip over. I think they are shopping in a store, like a little
they go fishing. Yeah,
to go fishing, and she's and then there's a couple of people, the ones working at the store, they're all excited to see June Carter shopping in their store, but then there's one woman basically
little
is
Miss High
a
and Mighty.
Bible Belt person that basically talks down to her because she got
divorce is
divorced.
always wrong, and you are a bad person.
Yes, exactly. And so that's part of what played into her conscience. And so that's what sort of prevented her from just going after Johnny, because there's a lot there, because she had just gotten divorced. She felt guilty about it. And obviously he's still married. And they both have kids and everything. So that kind of weighed on her. He didn't care quite as much. He was just determined. There's 2 things that he wanted in his life, and that was to make it big, which he did, and June Carter, which he wanted more than anything.
This is my third reference to Walk Hard, though. I love, so after they both run off stage,
duet.
He's all, well, no, not that, but
that's where
he goes and destroys the dressing room and even tears the sink off the wall, which happens in Walk Hard like 7 times. Every time he gets mad, he tears the sink off the wall. And that was actually
improvised by Joaquin Phoenix. He wasn't.
Really?
It wasn't in the script for him to rip that sink off the wall, but he just went with it. So.
And so yeah, now he's starting to have problems. He's starting to really get into the drugs really hard, and they're having like a rehearsal session on stage. And this is where June just has had enough.
They're all drunk.
They're all drunk, and he's probably high too. And what is it that she says? But she mentions the line, "You got to walk the line," or something like that.
Yeah, you can't walk the line. That's basically,
she writes that for him too.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. And that obviously became one of the biggest songs, and in fact, the name of the movie. And now we go through this montage where his
I walk the line montage.
I just wrote a lot happens. Is looking up. His career is looking up, but his life is going down. That's kind of the way I had it.
He gets married,
and it's sort of back and
the
forth.
biggest thing in there.
Right.
He gets what?
She gets married again, so that puts him off again because he's lost his chance yet again.
Right, and then there's a couple of awkward scenes between his wife and June at an awards show, and where he's obviously just more interested in June.
But this is where that was an important scene, because that's where he convinces her to go on tour with him again, because she was done with him and she has kids, but he got her to go back out with him again.
Right. Because they start doing their shows in Vegas, right?
Yeah. Well, they called it the Opry. It looked like Vegas, but
maybe
it wasn't the Opry. It's Vegas is where he had his meltdown, where he kicked out the lights.
But that happened at the Opry too, because he was kicked out of the Opry for a few years.
He did get fired in real life. He got fired from the Opry.
So maybe they were combining those into one event.
Part of the montage.
Yeah.
Well, because when they're in what I thought was Vegas, that's when he goes to Mexico to, when she throws all his pills out and everything like that. That's when he goes, because he collapsed on stage. And then she's kind of taking care of him. And I'm thinking it's a long ways from the Opry to Mexico. Don't you think?
Yeah,
so that's why I thought.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
Well,
but is
he
it
goes
in
to
Vegas
Mexico,
though?
they sing Jackson for the first time, and that's what leads to them actually finally hooking up.
He finally
and then you've got this
her.
weird scene where they're in the bed together in the morning, and he keeps taking these peanuts from her, and his laugh is just like insane.
I thought that was a fun scene. I liked it.
It's fun in a way, but it's also like, what the hell?
Right. Oh.
But they're very much they're having a good time there.
Yeah, they're just goofing off like people do in bed.
We also learned during that part there that she, and I never knew this till this time I watched it, she actually was the main writer of the Ring of Fire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't remember?
I think I read it. She co-wrote it, I think, in reality, but like in the movie, it's like she came up with the main line, and that's like where the song came from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was Johnny Cash actually had a vision in a dream of Mexican trumpets and adding Mexican trumpets to the song. That's actually how it happened. He woke up one morning. He had a dream about they were doing Ring of Fire, and they had been working on it and couldn't quite get it right. And then he had a dream about Mexican trumpets, and so
was
then
Clem
that's
Haskins
why they
playing one of them.
Clem Haskins.
Well, that's one thing that I was going to bring up, is that one of the reasons that we had really started to listen to Johnny Cash was because of the Ring of Fire song was used as a promotional video for MSC, which was the old Fox Sports North, where Gophers games were on, and they had cuts of Gopher basketball, and they had Clem Haskins playing the trumpet as a part of that. Of that little montage, and so we always sang along to it, and we had fun with it, and then we started. And then I remember I bought the Johnny Cash Greatest Hits CD, and I loved every minute of it. So anyway, where were we? So
after he got arrested for the drugs, like Gifford brought up, he finally returns home. But they get in this big fight. Him and his wife are still together, even though he's with June now.
Yes,
they get in this fight in front of the kids. She leaves for good, and this is where things go off the deep end now, because this is where, again, walk hard. This is a dark fucking period.
Speaking of deep end, literally, I thought that they had one shot of him, and I thought they were going for the juxtaposition here, cinematography, right, where he is sitting out next to his big, beautiful pool. Now he had this mansion, had a nice swimming pool and everything, but he's just sitting there looking all dejected and just totally burned out. And so that's where you kind of saw the two sides of his life there, just all in that one shot. And I think that's what they're going for.
This is the part of the movie where it starts to kind of lose me. I mean, I like it all the way through, but I feel like this depressing part, while it's obviously necessary, it needs to be in there. It goes on for a little while, and it's just kind of like, when you've seen it before, it kind of drags. So it's not my favorite part, and it shouldn't be, because it's not happy. But it's like
right.
But it's lucky for him, he passes out in the woods, and it just so happens to be by a house for sale. So that's also pretty lucky too.
Well, and going back just a little bit, I had my second dad quote of the movie after the one where his brother dies. This was the one after he gets busted with the pills in the airport. His dad says, "Now we won't have to work so hard to convince people he's been to jail."
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, I
gotta give credit to the dad for that one.
That's a hell of a line.
If I'd have been there, I'd have been like, "Ooh, sick burn."
Yeah.
So yeah, he finds this new wonderful big place to, and he's, has this beautiful place on the lake, and he invites everybody over for things.
Well, he invites
before
June,
that,
and
he
his parents
skipped over
come.
where he's living with Waylon Jennings. He's living with Waylon Jennings for a little while before he actually buys that house, right?
Yep, just in a motel.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was an apartment or a motel or what, but and then this is where he's got all this money. He got a big paycheck, but then he tries to take it to the bank, and he's just like totally flabbergasted with the entire world. And the bank can't cash it because it's so big, and they got to wait a couple of days for it to clear. And then he just tears it up and is all pissed off. Well, and then now eventually we get to his house that he does buy, and they're having this family dinner. And another good line, another great line that the dad had that I had written down. It's like, "Oh, you got a nice house here, Johnny." And then the dad goes, "It ain't as big as Jack Benny's."
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so this is where I think, the dad, they were not that estranged at this time, but it brings up the moment where they finally have at it right in front of everybody at dinner, and he tells him what he thinks, and the dad comes back harder, and Johnny just walks out because he can't handle it.
Yep.
Tries to get that tractor out. And this is the lowest point. He falls into the water. June takes him out and helps to start to nurse him back. And I love how she's nursing him back, but her parents are helping too. And when the drug guy comes and they chase him off with a gun, that's an awesome scene.
Yeah, the dad and the mom both
so
had shotguns, right?
They are some supportive, nice people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good people with guns right there.
The good guy with gun.
Good guy with a gun.
So now he gets himself back put together, and he goes in to see the record execs, and he says we need to record this new album in Folsom.
Yep.
And they're not real keen on it.
Just backing up 1 second, because I had this written down, where the parents, as you just said, were very supportive, and they knew that they had to help him, and June didn't want to. She was reluctant at first, but they all knew that June was the only one that was going to be able to save him, because he was going to only pay attention to her, because she was the one that he loved and wanted more than anything. And if he was going to get out of this, it was going to be because of June. And so that was why that was, I think, a big reason why they stayed and helped him out until he got clean. And then we move on to the next scene, Gifford.
I think when he's singing, when he's recording that album, this is where I think he sounds like Joaquin Phoenix sounds awesome singing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he progresses throughout the whole movie, and he just nails every part from beginning to end. And at the end here, he sounds as much like Johnny Cash as he could. He's really good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's clean now. He should sound better. I mean, it all fits together well.
Right. Well, and that's another thing where they take a little bit of license here. He's most likely clean while he's doing this, but I mean, he had issues with, drugs and alcohol throughout. It's not like that was his turning point.
I think I read he actually still was on into the 80s, was still having trouble. But
so in the Folsom scene at the end, we see the warden. Did that warden look familiar to you, gentlemen?
I didn't notice.
No.
He was in a little movie, I believe 1983's Vacation, as a highway cop on a motorcycle.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
He's the guy who pulls over Chevy after he drags the dog to death.
Tough little guy. Probably hung on for a mile or so.
Do you know what the penalty is for animal cruelty in this state?
It's probably pretty stiff. Let's see that movie again.
Yes. You can go back and listen to our Vacation episode last July.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we got a couple more proposals here to wrap it up. He proposes on the bus. She's still not interested at all. Yep. Proposes again on stage, and this is real. They were in the middle of Jackson, and he did propose on stage, and she finally said yes. So that was how it happened.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And he had a nice moment with his dad at the end of the movie too, which that's nice that they threw that in there.
Was one I don't think we mentioned. I think there was one kind of an important moment that we skipped over back when he's still at the house after he kind of gets clean. Now he starts getting letters from all the prisoners.
Oh yeah,
right.
Oh
so
right,
he's
right.
That's what helped inspire that, right?
Yeah. And so he's got all of this mail, and it's all fan mail, but it's all from different prisoners around the country and everything. And that was one of the things that inspired what is sort of the climax of the movie at Folsom Prison, which we saw at the beginning of the movie. But but all these prisoners, because of the music and because of who he was, these prisoners actually felt seen. They felt like because these are people that are rejected, and all their lives, nobody believes in them. Nobody even cares about them anymore. Everyone's forgotten about them. But he always made it a point, and Johnny Cash in real life did this, was that he felt like it was his purpose, maybe. Um, but he realized that it wasn't always 100% the fault of the prisoners, and they were a lot of times given a raw deal. Even if they committed the crime, they might have been, it might have been because of their upbringing, it might have been because of just other things that they had been through in their lives. And so, and nobody else understands that or understood that. But he did, and he sang and wrote about it in a number of his songs, not the least of which, of course, being Folsom Prison Blues, which is written from the prisoner's point of view.
Yes.
So anyway,
great.
going on.
No, that's a great wrap up.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
Wonderful film. Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, I hadn't
pick from
watched
Mr.
it in a long time, and I was at first I didn't know, but then as I was going to watch it, I'm like, I'm excited to watch this again. And it was, like I said, there's that one part 3/4 of the way through that kind of loses me, but there's so much good stuff in here, and so much good acting and singing, and the music is great, of course, and it's definitely worth the time, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. So
and
one
it's
thing
something that was
oh,
important to all of us at one point. We're all big fans.
Yeah.
and still is.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I wanted to do for this episode, because Johnny Cash is such a legend in and of itself, his music is second to none, and he's got so many great songs. Just a great storyteller in all of his songs. That's the thing about his music. You can always understand his lyrics. You know, some songs you cannot hear or understand what they're even singing about or figure it out. I mean, his music is so literal and just easy to follow along the story that he's telling. And he paints such a great picture in many of his songs, and you can visualize. I think I didn't have this. We're going to go into our top 5 Johnny Cash songs, but I think the best example of where he paints that picture is the song Long Black Veil. If you're familiar with that one, where he just sort of, which is about a guy that he's singing from the grave, is what he's singing from, and the reason that he died was because he was put to death. He was executed because he didn't have an alibi for a murder that was committed, and the only other person that knew about it was his best friend's wife, who came to visit the grave in the Long Black Veil. Is just a very haunting song, but she was the only one that knew that he didn't commit the crime. He did not commit the murder because he was sleeping with her at the time that it happened. And so, I mean, it's that type of story that he tells so well, that just gives you a chill in many cases. So I'm going to start with Brad on your top Johnny Cash songs. Take us away.
Thanks, Pete.
Sure.
So when I was going to do this, I was like, well, we're all going to pick I Walked the Line, Folsom Prison, and Ring of Fire. So I thought about just taking those 3 out of the equation and picking 5 others. But then I ended up putting a couple of those in anyway, so I didn't know what I was doing. I listened to a lot of songs today, a couple times, and my number 1 is Folsom Prison Blues. That song is that's one of the original bangers right there. Yep. That's awesome. And then Ring of Fire, as we've already brought up, I didn't want to take those 2 out because those 2 are that good. And number 3 is Jackson. And I'm not a huge June fan, but that song is awesome. Those are my top 3, no doubt, right there. The rest of these, I don't know. They could be any of these. I ended up putting I've Been Everywhere at number 4 because I listened to that today again. I'm like, well, this is a really cool song. And then my number 5, I put A Boy Named Sue, because speaking of a storyteller, that is an entire story, and it's fun, and it was like the prison version. You can hear the people laughing, and that is just an awesome song. And to me, that feels like Johnny Cash essence. So I didn't even have I Walk the Line in the top 5, I guess. The ones that I didn't put in that I could have, I love Daddy Sang Bass.
Oh,
And
Mhm.
that was a good one because when I listened to it today, I didn't realize that one kind of has that. It's actually a lot about God too. It's like a Christian song, and I thought it was just not, but it is. Tennessee Flat Top Box, which Rose and Cash also sang. Get Rhythm, Cry, Cry, Cry are good. And then the other one I wanted to throw out is the version of Hurt by Nine Inch
Yes.
Nails, which
Yep.
I didn't put in the top 5. That song's kind of tough to listen to, but when you realize how soon after that he died and listen to his voice, I mean, it is really
Yep.
something.
It
I
is.
mean,
It's haunting,
It's
and
it
haunting
is.
is
And it
exactly what I
builds,
wrote down.
man, if you
reflective.
listen all the way through, it just builds.
Yes.
So those are the ones I went through. I picked 5, but I had 6 others there that were in my head as well.
Awesome.
Let's have GIF go and Pete can finish it.
All right. Well, I wrote down a few. I mean, they're all so good. Again, A Boy Named Sue. I'm a sucker for a good story. That's story time all over the place
I'm a
right
sucker.
there. Hurt, again, just a haunting song.
Is this your list or are these extras?
Well, I've only got. I'll finish with my top 2. I have 2
Oh.
that are my top
Okay,
2.
like I had 3 that were really my
Yep.
top 3.
And then of course, Walk the Line, Get Rhythm, Ring of Fire. My 5 Feet High and Rising. That's a
Yeah.
fun little one. But my top 2, and you can put them in either order, are Folsom Prison Blues and The Man Comes Around. I love
Listen
that
to
one.
that again, I guess.
Yeah, I really like that one. So
Interesting.
go ahead, Pete.
I think I just have one that's not on either of your lists. So I'm going to start from the bottom and go from the top because that one song is my number 1. So my number 5 is Tennessee Flat Top Box. I love that song. I can just
Really?
sing along to it when it comes
Yeah.
on. It's fun. I love it. My 4 is Hurt. Again, because no song just makes you feel what the singer is feeling more than that one. In all of music, I don't think there's another song that just tugs at your heartstrings as much as that song does. As you said, Brad, especially when you consider that it is at the end of his life, he's being very reflective, and if you see the video, it hits you that much more. Just a real powerful song, powerful video altogether. My number 3 was Get Rhythm. Just a fun, happy song. My 2 was Folsom Prison. My number 1 song is the main song at the end of this movie. It's Cocaine Blues. I love that song. When it comes on, I'll sing along every word. It's the hardcore side of Johnny Cash, and it's like, it's another one. It tells just a great story. It's fun. I love that. I love that prison scene. I really didn't know the song until this movie. But then as I saw the movie way back when it first came out, then I went back and I listened to the original of this one, and I could not stop listening to it. I can play it over and over, and I just love that song. So that rounds out my list.
Now I want to hear your dad's version of I've Been Everywhere.
Right. You got a recording of that anywhere?
I don't know that he's got. I don't think he's got it recorded anywhere that I'm aware of. But
I think the version of that I was listening to today was when Johnny Cash was much older, and I got to go back. He did all those American recordings like when he was much older.
Yes,
and his voice sounds pretty cool. And I think I should be more familiar with some of those later recordings because I think that was a version of that I was listening to, and that was part of why I liked it.
There's another one of those songs. I'm glad you mentioned the American recordings because when I think of that, other than Hurt, the one, and he did a whole bunch of covers too. He did
there's a ton of covers,
and but there's one of his songs that stands out to me. It's called "Oh Delia." I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but that's another one that it's a little like Cocaine Blues in that he shoots his wife or shoots his girlfriend, and he's really reflective and sad about it. But it was one that stood out to me as well. So I had forgotten about that song. I'll have to go back and listen to it now. But I think that wraps it up. You know who Johnny Cash really should have done a cover of?
Preacher Row.
Preacher Row. I would love to see Johnny Cash do Standing on My Own 2 Feet.
So here's the deal, Pete.
I'm standing.
I loved your description of his music. I loved your description of his music being bipolar because he has all the Christian music and all the other like drug and killing music.
Yes.
And one of my favorite Preacher Row songs was called Bipolar. He should do that one.
There you go.
Oh my God.
Let's
Too
dig
late
him up
now.
and do it.
Amazing.
Of course. Yeah, we're 19 years too late.
Yeah, a little late.
All right. Well, here it is, Preacher Row. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Bye. Bye.
Standing on my own 2 feet. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. Hands tied, tell me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared, but there's nothing I